Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are opening the hood on a topic that, I'll be honest, usually scares people away. It has a reputation. You hear the name and you think ivory tower. You think pure math. You think, I need a PhD just to print hello world.
We are talking about Haskell.
We are talking about Haskell, the language where you can spend, 5 hours trying to figure out how to handle a side effect because the language is just so pure.
It is uncompromising, that's for sure. But here's the thing about today's deep dive. We aren't looking at Haskell from an academic perspective.
Well,
we aren't discussing category theory or monads in the abstract. We are looking at it through the eyes of a craftsman. A plumber, actually.
a plumber, I love that.
Yeah.
We're analyzing a specific refactoring journey documented in a blog post titled Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 38. Moving CLI logic to library modules.
And let's just pause on that title for a second, Part 38.
Right. This isn't a Learn Haskell in 24 hours post. This is a long-term relationship.
It is. The author, who writes under the name Ang at kianmeng.org, published this just recently, January 22, 2026. And the vibe is very much, here is what I wrestled with today.
So, our mission today is surprisingly grounded. We are going to look at the nuts and bolts of building a command line interface, a CLI tool.
Yep.
Specifically, we're going to solve a problem that I think haunts every developer, regardless of the language they use. It's that moment where you stare at the screen and say, why does it work with this tool, but it explodes with that tool?
The classic build tool showdown, strictness versus convenience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to see a face-off between two heavyweights in the Haskell ecosystem, Cabal and Stack. But before we get to the drama, and there is drama, we have to set the stage with the code itself.
Right.
What is Ang actually building here?
So Ang is working on a tool called XD eBook. It's a CLI application, and he's at a point that I think every developer recognizes. The code works, it runs, but he's looking at his project structure, and he's wincing a little bit. It's messy.
You need some structural hygiene.
Precisely. He starts with a file setup that is extremely common when you're prototyping or just starting out. You have your project directory, you have an app folder, and inside that you have main.hs.
And let me guess, main.hs is doing a lot more than just being main.
Oh, it's doing everything.
Yeah.
It's the kitchen sink approach. In the original code provided in the source, main.hs is importing the argument parser library-options.applicative.
Okay.
It's defining the parser logic. It's defining the helper text. It's defining the modifiers. It's effectively the entire brain of the operation jammed into the entry point.
I can picture it. You open the file expecting to see a start engine button, and instead you see the blueprints for the pistons, the fuel mixture ratio, and the upholstery instructions all on page 1.
That is a perfect analogy. And in software engineering, specifically in a functional language like Haskell, where we value separation of concerns, this is a code smell.
Right.
It's functional, it runs, but it's brittle. It's hard to read. So Ang decides to perform a bit of surgery.
Okay, so talk me through the surgery. What are we cutting out and where are we putting it?
The goal is to take all that heavy lifting, the logic of how to parse the user's commands, the flags, the arguments, and move it out of the executable file.
Transplant the brain.
He wants to transplant the brain into a library module.
So he creates a new home for it.
Right. He creates a new directory structure.
Yeah.
srcx2ebookcli.hs.
Okay, SRC for source. That implies this is now part of the core library of the application, not just the runner script.
Correct. And in this new file, CLI.hs, he creates a function called parse CLI. This function becomes the container for all those imports we saw earlier, XX parser, helper, full desk. All the messy details of understanding what the user types into the terminal now live here.
So CLI.hs is now the expert on how to read commands. If that's the case, what happens to the old app main.hs? It must look completely different.
It's beautifully sparse. The new main.hs is essentially simplified down to 2 lines of actual consequence.
Just 2.
First, it imports the new module, import xs2ebook.cli, parse CLI. And second, the main function is just main will parse CLI.
That is satisfying.
It is, isn't it?
It's like walking into a clean room. You open main.hs and it tells you exactly what it does without shouting the details at you. I am main and I run the CLI parser. Done.
It signals intent. But Ang actually poses a rhetorical question in his notes here. He asks, is this the idiomatic way to restructure a Haskell application?
Right.
Is this actually the right way to do it, or is he just being tidy for tidiness' sake?
That's a valid question. Sometimes we over-engineer things just to make them look pretty.
Yeah.
Is there a functional benefit here?
The verdict is a resounding yes, and the reason goes beyond just looking pretty. The primary driver for this kind of refactor in professional software, and this is the key insight for anyone listening who wants to level up their architecture, is testability.
Right, because testing main
Yeah.
is, well, traditionally it's a nightmare, isn't it?
It's nearly impossible to do efficiently. In Haskell, the main function has a type signature of I/O. It is an action. It interacts with the real world.
Right.
To test main, you'd have to actually invoke the binary, capture the standard output, maybe mock the file system interaction. It's slow, it's flaky, and it's heavy.
You can't just run a unit test on it.
Exactly. It's locked away in the executable. But by moving the logic to parse CLI inside the SerRC library folder, you've liberated it.
Liberated. I like that.
You have. Now you can import xs2ebook.cli into a test suite. You can write a test that says, hey, pretend I pass these arguments. Do I get the result I expect?
Ah.
You don't need to build the whole app or spin up a shell environment to check if your logic holds up.
So you've turned a black box into a clear glass box.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Right.
You're optimizing for the future maintainer who needs to verify the code without running the whole machine.
Precisely. But, and here's where our story takes a turn, moving the files is only half the battle. In the world of Haskell, you have to tell the computer you move them.
And this brings us to the tale of two build tools. Aang has finished his refactor. The code looks great. The files are in the right places. He feels good. He goes to his terminal to run it. And he starts with a tool called Cabal.
Cabal, the OG build tool for Haskell. It's powerful, it's ubiquitous, but it is very literal.
So he types Cabal run. He hits enter. What happens?
A hard stop. The computer spits back. Could not find module xs2ebook.cli.
That has to be frustrating. You just created the file. You can see it in your file explorer. It's right there.
It gets worse. The error message suggests using the -v flag to see where it looked. It's essentially the computer saying, look, I searched the places I know about, and I promise you this file does not exist in my reality.
You're gaslighting him.
A little bit, but it's actually just bureaucratic. Cabal relies on a .cabal file, a configuration manifest, that lists every single module that is officially part of the project.
I see.
If you don't write the name of the file on the list, Cabal pretends it doesn't exist. It's strict, explicit.
So in the Cabal world, if you add a new file, you have a second chore. You must manually update the manifest.
Correct. You have to go into xs2ebook.cabal and add xs2ebook.cli to the exposed modules list. If you forget, the build breaks. Simple as that.
But Aang doesn't do that immediately. He decides to try a different hammer. He switches to Stack.
Stack is the other major build tool in the ecosystem. It manages dependencies a bit differently, often focused on reproducible builds.
So he runs the exact same code, no changes to the files,
Yeah.
no manual edits to the config using Stack run.
Mhm.
And
It works perfectly.
Thanks like that.
Instant success. The output shows missing.usage.xs2ebook. Now, that sounds like an error, but in this context, it's a victory lap. It means the program compiled, it linked, it ran, it executed the parser, realized no arguments were provided, and printed the help text.
Okay, hold on. Why? Why does Stack have X-ray vision while Cabal is stumbling around in the dark? Is Stack just smarter?
It's not necessarily smarter, but it is more automated. Stack, in this specific setup, uses a tool called hpack.
hpack. Okay, what is hpack doing?
Think of hpack as a scout. When you run Stack, hpack runs first. It scans your source directories. It looks at the file tree and says, oh, hey, look at this. There's a new file here called cli.hs inside the xs2ebook folder.
It discovers the file on its own.
It discovers it, and then, and this is the crucial part that explains the magic, it edits the configuration file for you. It automatically injected xs2ebook.cli into the exposed modules section of the .cabal file behind the scenes.
Wow. So it's like having an executive assistant who watches you code, notices you made a new file, and quietly fills out the necessary paperwork in the background so you don't have to deal with the bureaucracy.
That is the perfect description, and for a developer in the flow state, that is incredibly valuable. You create a file, you run it, you don't have to stop and do data entry.
This raises an interesting philosophical point about tools, doesn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, you have Cabal, which demands you be explicit. You know exactly what is in your project because you typed it there.
Right.
On the other hand, you have Stack and hpack, which prioritize convenience and discovery.
It represents a shift in modern development. It's the difference between driving a manual transmission and an automatic with lane assist. The manual gives you total control. Nothing happens without your input.
Yeah.
If the car shifts gears, it's because you shifted it. The automatic is smoother, faster for most people, but do you lose touch with how the engine works?
That's the danger, right? If hpack breaks or if you move to an environment that doesn't have it, Do you remember that exposed modules field even exists? Or
Yes.
do you stare at the error message having no idea what a Cabal file even does?
Exactly. If the magic stops, can you still be a plumber?
Speaking of plumbers, I think this is the perfect moment to pivot. We've been talking about the code, but I want to talk about the coder.
Yeah.
Because the way he presents this information, this whole old software plumber persona, is just as interesting as the refactoring itself.
Oh, absolutely. The persona here is unique. It adds so much flavor to what could have been a very dry technical note.
He describes himself as an old software plumber, and he signs off his posts with, "Yours truly, Ang." It's not the typical tech bro or 10x developer vibe you see on Twitter. It feels very humble, very craftsmanlike.
It does, and if you look at the sidebar of qianmeng.org, which is the source for this deep dive, you realize that plumber is a metaphor for how he approaches everything in life.
We aren't just talking about code here. This blog post is part 38 of Notes on Haskell, part 38. That's a significant commitment in itself.
It is.
But then you look at his other interests, and it's a rabbit hole.
A wonderful rabbit hole.
Walk us through some of these notes. What else is Ang tinkering with?
Well, looking at the list, biology and nature seem to be a huge theme. He has a series called Notes on Fish Keeping. And to give you a sense of the scale, it's at part 178.
Part 178, just on fish.
And it's not just I fed the fish today. The topics are things like building a custom sump filter, detailed observations on tubifex worms, breeding logs for zebra cichlid. He has specific betta spawn logs.
That is wild. That implies years of documentation.
Yeah. And then there's the gardening.
Oh, I saw this. I honestly thought it was a typo when I first looked at the source material.
Notes on gardening, part 784.
784 entries on gardening.
Revisiting the butterfly pea, air layering techniques, propagating ferns. This is someone who documents the world with the same rigor he applies to a Haskell compiler error.
I love that. It completely reframes the technical content. Usually when you read a coding tutorial, it feels sterile. But knowing this guy is also tracking the daily body weight of his diet, notes on dieting, or figuring out the best soil mix for ferns, it humanizes the struggle with the code.
It shows a specific mindset, the plumber mindset. Whether you are dealing with a tank of water and fish, a garden bed, or a Haskell build system, it's all about inputs, outputs, flows, and maintenance.
Systems thinking.
Exactly. If the water quality in the tank drops, the fish die. If the configuration in the .cabal file is missing, the build dies. It's the same problem-solving loop. You diagnose, you fix, you document.
And clearly, he documents everything. We see notes on photography, notes on guitar, notes on meditation, even notes on home improvement.
And alongside that, notes on Elixir, notes on Rust, notes on Go, notes on AI. He is the polymath in the truest sense. But he presents it all as just notes. He's not lecturing, he's learning.
That's a key distinction. He's not writing a textbook. He's letting us look over his shoulder as he tinkers.
Yes.
And I think that's why the hip discovery in the blog post feels so authentic. He didn't start the post knowing the answer. He documented the failure with Cabal and then the success with Stack.
It's the scientific method in action: hypothesis, test, observe, record.
So let's circle back to the technical takeaway here, viewing it through this old software plumber lens. We started with a messy main HS.
Right. A clogged pipe, if you will.
Sure.
Too much gunk stuck in one place.
We cleared the clog by moving the logic to a library module, CLI.hs. This made the system cleaner and, crucially, testable.
We added inspection ports. Now we can check the water pressure error, the parser logic, without digging up the whole lawn or running the whole executable.
I love that we're sticking with the metaphor.
It works.
And then we ran into a bureaucracy problem. The strict building inspector Cabal demanded a permit for the new pipe.
But the modern contractor stack used a robotic assistant to file the permit automatically as soon as the pipe was laid.
And the lesson for us, the listeners, is twofold. One is technical. If you're building CLI apps in Haskell, separate your logic from your executable. It's the idiomatic way. It makes testing possible.
Absolutely. Don't put business logic in main. That's rule number one.
But the second lesson is broader. It's about the tools we choose. Stack and hpack offered a seamless experience here. They removed friction, but as developers, we need to be aware of how they did it.
Right. Automation is great until it hides the underlying reality. It's important to know that the .cabal file exists even if you have a robot editing it for you. Because one day, the robot might take a day off.
Or you might be on a server where you only have Cabal. Or you debugging a CI pipeline that fails because hpack isn't installed.
Exactly. The old plumber knows how to use the power tools. He explicitly praises Stack for the discovery, but I bet he also knows how to use a manual wrench if he has to.
I bet he does. Probably has a note about it.
Oh.
Part 42, the virtues of the monkey wrench.
I'd read it.
Looking at that list, Part 784 of gardening, Part 178 of fish keeping, it's a reminder of the power of consistency.
It is.
You don't become an expert or even a well-documented amateur by doing things in bursts.
Yeah.
You do it by showing up.
That's the secret sauce. Aang isn't writing these notes for an audience of millions. He's writing them to learn. And by doing it every day or every week, he builds this massive repository of knowledge. It's the deep dive philosophy applied to a whole life.
So here's a question for you to chew on as you head back to your own code or your garden. We live in an era of incredible developer tooling. AI copilots, auto-discovery build systems, one-click deployment.
It's never been easier to build software.
It hasn't. But as the tools get smarter, are we getting lazier? If hpack always adds the module for you, do you lose the mental model of how your project is structured?
It's what we call the GPS effect. I can get anywhere in the city using GPS, but if my phone dies, I realize I don't actually know the street names. I don't have the map in my head.
Are we building software with GPS, or do we know the territory?
That is the question.
Something to think about the next time you type stack run, and it just magically works. I want to thank our old software plumber, Aang, for the notes, and all of you for listening.
Keep tinkering.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.